Okay guys, so it's finally time to share with you the unboxing and analysis of this new 2019 Antares. I actually got this box yesterday, but I wanted to wait until today so I could go out to the store and buy these things right here. And I'll tell you what, I'm pretty disappointed. The box on these white cotton gloves said large, but in no way are these large. These feel like probably a large for kids or women. But anyway, the show must go on, and let's get to this unboxing. Now this Antares is probably, I don't know, I didn't know if I wanted to actually get this reel or not. And I decided last minute that I would like to try it out. And luckily it was probably the first of the 3 reels that Shimano released this year that I actually wanted to buy. So the other 2 being, of course, the Scorpion MGL and the CASITAS SLX. What am I talking about? It's just called the SLX MGL. Alright. It's kind of tough with these damn gloves. Of course, he's always grateful when I buy from him. I got this from Japan Lure Shop. Alright, so Antares. Of course, if you're a repeat customer, he gives a gift. And he gave a MEGABASS, what is this? Flap Slap LBO. That's kind of cool. The color probably won't work here, but I'll try it out anyway. Alright, here we go. Now, I was kind of disappointed when they released the specs on this Antares, and I'll show you guys later on in this video. But when I saw the casting video of this thing, I decided I did want it. So I pulled the trigger. Of course, it's a nice matte gray or black box with the silver foil lettering. Here's your paperwork in Japanese. Wow, that's packed really, really nice. Got your oil. Yeah, it's got some heft to it. Alright, let's see here. Put that off to the side. It's a nice little, looks like it's perforated bag here. And the reel itself is actually still in plastic. Wow, look at that. And this plastic is sealed, so I gotta cut this open. Oh, it actually just came out the other side. What was I doing? Alright guys, this is why I have these white cotton gloves on. And wow, this thing is small. But yeah, let me let you guys take a good look at it. And then we'll go over my observations. So I thoroughly inspected the reel, and let's talk about it. Now Shimano seems to be going through this phase where they are just making smaller and smaller reels, and I wasn't really prepared to witness just how small this new Antares is. Now, of course, they released some pictures and a couple of videos before the Japan fishing shows. Now, some of the pictures made this thing look smaller, and some pictures made it look bigger. But now that I have it in hand, this thing is tiny. Let me show you the size of this reel compared to some others. So the first reel I'm going to compare it with is going to be the Shimano Antares DC. You can immediately see just how small it is compared to the Antares DC. The Antares DC is massive. Now, as far as the previous Antares, the one this is replacing, I've seen pictures and I've read reviews, and they said that reel was just about as big as this Antares DC. So this new Antares is much smaller than the old one from what I've read. Okay, let's take a look at it versus the current METANIUM. As you can see, current METANIUM is a little bit bigger. It's a little bit longer than the new Antares. Now the camera really doesn't show the size difference. When I'm turning my head to the side of the camera looking at it, I can see that the new Antares is noticeably smaller. Now let's compare it to one of Shimano's smallest reels in their lineup, and that is the BANTAM. Now the BANTAM looks smaller to me, but only because the nose on the Antares is longer. Other than that, they are very, very similar. So yeah, the new Antares is much tinier than the old Antares, which I think is probably the main reason why I didn't buy that old Antares, because it was just a big reel and a couple other things as well. But yeah, this new Antares is tiny by comparison. So let's talk about the specs real quick. We'll just gloss over them real fast. Now, of course, this is all metal. The frame is made of magnesium, and the side plates are made of aluminum. So I wonder why Shimano just didn't go with all magnesium. Now, of course, this is made in Japan, as with all Shimano higher end reels. Hopefully you guys can see that. Anyways, you get the picture. Made in Japan. It's got 10 ball bearings and 1 roller bearing, just like the old model. It's got this really curved metal 84mm handle, and I wish they would have went with a 90, to be honest. Make it a little bit longer. Now, of course, it's got the micro module gears, the X-ship double bearing supported pinion. It's got the S3D spool. It's got the 2nd generation silent tune, and that is keeping the spool bearing in place with rubber O-rings instead of a spring like the old generation silent tune. Now, it's got a clicking drag this time around. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but it's got a drag clicker. And this is freshwater only, no saltwater rating from Shimano. And it's got that same big cone-shaped, egg-shaped oval tapered line guide. Now, one thing I noticed about the line guide was that it is still pretty close to the spool, and they could have brought it forward probably 1/4 of an inch. But oh well, reminds me of the BANTAM in that respect. As you can see, the frame is asymmetrical. Something about the top of the line Antares, Shimano likes to make them asymmetrical. And yeah, that's pretty much it. They moved the SVS Infinity dial from the bottom, where it was kind of inconspicuous, to the side where you know it's there and it's for something. As you can see, it's got that nice red indicator dot. But it palms really, really good. It's got this huge space for your thumb. And yeah, that's the basic specs. Now it does come in 2 ratios only. I think 6.2 and 7.4. I got the high gear, which is the 7.4. For some reason, Shimano is not giving these top line Antares, you know, the 8-to-1 or the 9-to-1 super high speed, which is kind of disappointing. Okay, now the main change for me, and is probably what pushed me to buy this reel finally, was the new MGL3 spool. I'm gonna flip this over, and that was the main thing that pushed me to buy this reel. Now the old reel had what they call the G-free spool, I believe, but they went with what they call the MGL3 spool, and we'll go over that here in a moment. Now it's time to pull the scale out and get some weights and measurements. Okay guys, so I decided to ditch the gloves because it made handling these reels a little too hard. Those gloves were super small for my hands, and I almost dropped this reel a couple of times because of the shiny finish. But I got my super fancy AliExpress scale out. We're gonna see what this thing weighs. Okay, now it said, according to Shimano's website, there was going to be a 5-gram weight reduction, which isn't really all that much. But we are looking at, hopefully you guys can see that, it's 7.824 ounces. So it's kind of on the heavier side compared to most reels that I have. But considering this thing is made of all metal, that's to be expected. Now just to put that in perspective, the Bantam weighs in at 7.85, so it weighs about the same as the new Antares, but the new Antares is supposed to have a magnesium frame that's lighter than aluminum, which is what the Bantam is made of. So I wonder why they weigh roughly the same. I think it's probably because of the brass gear, while the Bantam has aluminum. But just to put that in perspective, let's see what this Antares DC weighs, and it weighs even lighter. So this massive, huge Antares DC reel weighs less than this new tiny Antares. That's kind of a surprise. So I wonder where that weight is coming from in comparison to this thing right here. And of course, you got your METANIUM, that's magnesium frame and side plate at only 6.2 ounces. So this thing is not a lightweight, but I think it makes up for it, just like the Bantam, in the fact that it's so compact and comfortable to palm. My thumb just sits right on this top plate here. Now it is, of course, super smooth. And when I first got it out of the box and started turning the handle, it felt like there was a little bit of a resistance there. Almost like there was too much grease inside. But the more that I turn the handle, the freer and smoother it gets, and less resistance to turn the handle. Reminds me of the Bantam. The more I use the Bantam, the smoother it seems to get. Okay, so let's get to the nitty gritty, which is this new MGL3 spool. So basically you just pop that open, and of course it's spring loaded. You pull the spool out. Okay, so the first thing you notice is that Shimano ships these with all 4 brakes on. And here is a look at the new silent tune. It's got an O-ring right there in front of the bearing, and there's actually an O-ring on the bearing itself. Instead of the spring, this is what Shimano uses to keep this bearing locked in place during the cast. So I was going to take this bearing off to try to weigh this spool, but with that O-ring there, I'm going to leave it there. But the big thing about this spool is that they've narrowed it as far as width. So I'm going to pull out the METANIUM spool and we're going to make a comparison. Okay, so here's the spool of the METANIUM, and in my hand it actually feels a little heavier, but you can see the difference in the width. So the METANIUM is 22 millimeters wide, while this new MGL3 spool is only 19 millimeters wide. So that's going to decrease that, I guess, that line angle friction to the level wind even more. Now, another thing is that they reduced the size of the spool to 34 millimeters, so it's a more standard size, versus the old spool was a big whopping 36 millimeters. Now this is an MGL spool, but you can see it does not have the sidewall porting of the other MGL spools, and I wonder why they did that. But let's see what it weighs. This thing feels like it weighs significantly less than this. Let me make sure I got this on grams. There we go. Okay, so you're looking at, okay, wow, 13.1 grams with a bearing. Now, I think I've seen either on Tackle Tour or on some kind of a video, some Russian guy might have weighed the spool, and the old spool weighed like 16 grams, so that's a massive weight loss there. And without the bearing, you're probably looking at close to an 11.5 gram spool. Now it's deeper than this METANIUM spool, but it's really not that deep. And I'm going to list a list of the line capacities on the screen for you. But here's the METANIUM spool. It's also got a bearing that weighs in at 14 grams. So this is lighter than the METANIUM spool, and we all know how awesome the METANIUM casts. I'm really excited to get out on the water to see what a difference this MGL3 spool will make as far as casting. And in fact, that's what the I guess the marketing was about the Antares, was that the casting feel was dramatically different than even their current MGL reels. So I'm going to test that out for you guys. Okay, so let's talk about some of the quirks and characteristics of this new Antares that I found when I was doing my inspection. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is this handle design. Now, in a previous video, I said that I didn't like this little piece here that covers the nut. It's kind of boring looking, and now that I have it in hand, I still don't like this piece here. I wish they would have made this a more special design, considering the position and the cost of this reel. And in order to, I guess, take this handle off, there's this screw located right here. Hopefully the camera will pick it up. But yeah, there's a screw right there. And I guess it's kind of a, you know, clever design, but it just looks a little bit boring to me, and in fact I'm probably going to swap out this handle and the knobs. And speaking of knobs, it is the very comfortable asymmetrical Septon knobs. Now the end caps, they feature that, I guess, that open-sided knob end design, but I wish they would have made these end caps silver. That would have kind of set it off a little bit better. Or at least, you know, anodize the outer section like they did with the METANIUM DC. And the drag star, it is the, I guess, the retro style typical Shimano design. Of course, it does click, and I believe it is forged aluminum. Now the clicks are very precise, but they're very muted as far as the clicking sound, and I think they did that on purpose. So not very loud clicks for the drag star. Let's talk about this spool tension. That was kind of a a point of interest in my previous videos. Now the spool tension, the only thing that turns is this outer ring right here, this silver part. Now the center part doesn't turn, so let me see if I can demonstrate. Now, of course it clicks, and it's got these really precise clicks. But as you can see, the center section with the Antares logo does not turn. But the center section actually moves in and out. So let me see if I can demonstrate. So if I loosen this all the way, and it takes quite a few turns to loosen it, you'll see that center section is flush, but the more I turn it, it's starting to rise out. Now one thing about this spool tension design is I wish they would have given this bigger teeth, because it's kind of slippery when I'm turning the spool tension ring. Now Shimano went with the, I guess, their newer style thumb bar. This is pretty much the same one you see on the Bantam. Well, it's okay. I like the old style better. Now here's the Antares DC. It's got a lot more surface area for your thumb. It feels a lot more luxurious. And because it has a lot more surface area, it takes a lot less effort to press this thumb bar, because more of your thumb is actually pressing. Now with this new thumb bar design, well, it is very nice, it just doesn't feel as good as the old one. So I hope Shimano goes back to the old design or gives us a better design for future models. Now one thing that was kind of curious, in my opinion, was that Shimano made a big deal about the Bantam being the core solid, you know, one-piece frame, and then just the side plate right here. Now I'm wondering why they didn't include that design on the new Antares. And it's probably because, you know, magnesium frame and aluminum side plates. But like I said before, they should have just made it all magnesium. But that probably would have driven up the cost. So no core solid design for the new Antares. Now, let's talk about this versus the old model. Now the old model was a groundbreaking reel in Shimano's history. Now it featured a lot of the newer technologies that kind of leapfrogged Shimano way ahead of the competition, like the SBS Infinity brakes, the micro module gears. It's got the X ship, the first time it was used on a low profile bait caster. And yeah, the old Antares was basically a huge step forward in Shimano's evolution, and this new one seems to be more of an evolution of that old model. It's gotten smaller, but the only thing that's kind of, I don't know, new-ish is the MGL3 spool that's been, you know, made thinner. But other than that, the other Antares to me had a lot more interesting design as far as its components. The star drag of the old Antares was a lot better looking. This is more of a generic star drag you'll find on pretty much any Shimano. The spool tension knob was probably the best I've ever seen on the old one. It had a lot more detail. I wish they would have given this ring a little bit more detail. And yeah, I mean, the old one, of course, with all the technologies they released in that model, this was going to be a tough act to follow. But I think what Shimano was going for was more of an all-around package for this new model, giving it the smaller spool, the much more compact design. And they really didn't promote this one as much as the old one. Now the old model looked to be made specifically for long distance bombing. If you guys probably remember, the promotion came out and the guy was casting that 1/2 ounce casting plug like over 100 yards. I think it was like 99 meters. Well, this time around, they really didn't give us too much hype or promotion about this new Antares. It's kind of sad. So, as far as the price of this reel, now apparently it's already on Tackle Warehouse for pre-order. It's going to be $599. So, the price is exactly the same as the old one, which is kind of a disappointment. Now, to keep it in context, the STEEZ from DAIWA has went up in price to $550, so there's only a $50 difference between the two. And in case you didn't know, DAIWA raised the price on some of their reels secretly. The STEEZ A is now $500, the new FUEGO CT is now $110. So that kind of brings it more in line with the STEEZ SVTW at being $50 more. So what I'm going to do next, of course, at the first chance available, I'm going to take this out on the water, and I'm going to try to plan something special for you guys for the on the water impressions for this reel here. Now, I'm pretty satisfied with the purchase, but this thing did cost a lot of money, and I hope the performance of this new spool will reinforce my purchase decision. So be on the lookout for that, guys. Thanks a lot.